All right, so this video is showing how when you have white text overlaid on an image, how you could mock up in Photoshop and overlay maybe a gradient um, that would allow the text to have higher contrast with your picture. All right, so we are following the style and mocking up the homepage hero that's found on the WVU Reed College of Media. And it uses white text set in Helvetica. And so you can see that the pictures sometimes have too much bright color to have as much contrast as we want. So here's an example of a layer that's already been made, and you can see by adding some darkness, it allows for more contrast. So actually on the website, in the code, there is a gradient created. And here's another version. But when we're mocking it up, this video is intended to show you how you can mock up a gradient on top of an image. And of course, you can always flatten and serve an image from a website with a gradient already created on it. All right, so we're going to start with a new layer. So in our layers window, we do our flyout panel and we say new layer. I'm going to call it gradient. And we'll drag it above our picture. All right, so in our tools on the left, the gradient tool shows kind of a rectangle going from black to white. As soon as you have that tool activated, it updates this window up at the top, this panel, and you can do a drop down here and see all the options that you have. Some of the newer preferences on your website or on your Photoshop, if you haven't updated it, your basic gradients might be under basic. So you might need to scroll to that folder and open it. The presets is black to white, and then whatever your foreground is to transparent. So remember, this grid means transparent. So we're going to use our foreground, which is black, to transparent. All right, so how the gradient tool works is you have this cursor that when you click, it's going to draw out a line, and when you let go, it makes a gradient. All right, so it's going from black to transparent. So you can see where I drew the line, it made black, and then where I ended, that's where it made transparent. So I'm going to undo with Command Z. I'm going to show you there's this reverse checkbox. So this is going to do when I drag transparent to black. So if I would click and go all the way across my picture, we would expect to see transparent, and then at 50%, the black starts and it ends with 100% black. All right, so I'm going to undo again. So this is the first thumbnail, linear gradient. The second one is radial gradient. So what that does, I'm going to unclick reverse. As you can see, the inside is going to be black and it's going to go to transparent. So if I click here and go out, you can see I have done a radial gradient. The black is where I clicked and it drags out to transparent. All right, so you can already see that by darkening this area, the white text is more legible. All right, so I'm going to use a little bit of radial gradient. I'm going to start by the E and kind of drag out some. Okay, so one of the things you can do is once you have a layer, you can change the opacity. So maybe you don't want it to be quite as dark. Okay, you can also create a mask, and remember a mask, you would click your mask icon. It allows you to add white and black to hide and show whatever it is attached to. So white is showing all of it. If I wanted to remove some, I could go to my paintbrush and let's say I paint in black, right? You can see I'm now removing, I'm hiding this image here, the radial circle gradient with my mask. But if I go back to white, I can paint that right back in, right? So I'm not actually deleting pixels, I'm hiding and showing with my mask. So that's the beauty of the mask. So I'm going to delete my mask. The other thing you can do is often when you're painting in an area or using a gradient, you need to soften it. And the filter I always use is Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. It pops up a window. You can use your magnifying glass to zoom in or zoom out. And then you can change the radius, so you can see that you can soften. So right, this is becoming a lot just kind of a field of light gray versus here where it really has a dark circle in the center, right? So I'm just blurring out whatever's on the layer, right? So that's one way. So you can also, instead of using a mask, you could use your eraser tool. And let's say I don't want my sky where it's not a problem with the text. I'm going to make my brush size a bit larger to be any kind of issue. So I could just kind of delete out the part that I want, right? Now that looks really rough. And this is the beauty of the Gaussian blur. So now if I came up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, right, I could adjust it out so that you're not going to see any of my harsh lines, but I'm still darkening where I want. Okay. And remember, you can always come in and use your brush tool. I have black. Maybe I want it just darker kind of behind my text, right? So that it is more legible. So you can see here I have this harsh black. So I could come to my filter, blur, Gaussian blur, bring it down some, and just have a little bit of the darkness. And again, you can always adjust your opacity. All right, so those are the different ways that you can use a gradient or painting or masking to help create a more solid space for white text to be legible.